The phrase New World Order gets thrown around a lot. It can sound like a conspiracy theory whispered in dark corners of the internet. But the idea itself that maybe, just maybe, the world needs a single government is older than you might think. It's an idea that makes people nervous. It makes them ask questions. Is it about peace and cooperation, or is it about control and losing what makes us unique? The New World Order isn't about aliens or secret societies taking over. It's about the big question: can we, as humans, get past our differences and create a single system that works for everyone? It's a powerful idea, one that has fascinated and frightened people for centuries. It's a debate with no easy answers. The term itself has been used in different ways throughout history. Sometimes it's been used by leaders with good intentions, hoping for a more peaceful and cooperative world. Other times, it's been used by those with less noble goals, who see a single world government as a way to gain more power. Whether it's a utopian dream or a dystopian nightmare, the idea of a new world order continues to fascinate and frighten. It's a debate that forces us to confront fundamental questions about power, identity, and the future of humanity. It's a conversation that's more important now than ever before. History is full of turning points. World War I, World War II, the Cold War. These events shook the world. After so much destruction, the idea of a world government seemed necessary. If we could work together, maybe we could stop these things from happening again. People wanted a future without constant conflict. Could a world government be the answer? Imagine a world without war, a world without poverty, a world where everyone has equal opportunities. But is it realistic? And what would we have to give up to achieve it? Imagine a world ruled by a single, all-powerful entity. A world where individual liberty is sacrificed for the greater good. The idea of a unified world government is a double-edged sword. The idea of a one-world government has been around for centuries, but certain folks stand out as its champions. Thinkers, writers, even scientists have argued for a unified world. Albert Einstein became a vocal advocate for world government after World War II. H.G. Wells also argued passionately for a world federation. These big thinkers aimed to solve humanity's biggest problems. For proponents of a world government, it's not just about ending war, though that's a biggie. They envision a world where cooperation replaces competition, where resources are shared equitably, and where global problems are tackled with a united front. They're selling a dream, a vision of a better future for all humankind. Imagine a world without passports, where you're a citizen of Earth first and foremost. Imagine a world where cultural exchange isn't limited by borders, where you can experience the richness of human diversity without ever leaving your continent. They argue that a unified world could better address issues like climate change, poverty, and disease. These are global problems that don't respect national borders. A coordinated global response, they say, is the only way to effectively tackle these existential threats. Critics might scoff, but the dream is a powerful one. It taps into our deepest desires for peace, unity, and a sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves. It's a seductive vision, especially in a world often marred by conflict and division. One of the biggest concerns about a world government is, well, who's in charge? The image of some shadowy council dictating the lives of billions is enough to make anyone nervous. But proponents of a world government insist it wouldn't be some tyrannical dictatorship. They envision a system of global democracy where power rests with the people. How this global democracy would work is up for debate. Some propose a directly elected world parliament. Others envision a more decentralized system. The key, they argue, is representation. Every nation, every culture, every voice should have a seat at the table. It's about balancing the needs of the many with the rights of the individual. A world government wouldn't necessarily mean the erasure of national identity. Nations could maintain their sovereignty within a global framework. It's about finding a balance, a way to coexist peacefully and productively. Politics and economics are joined at the hip. Proponents of a world government point to economic benefits. They envision a stable, prosperous global economy. A single global currency could simplify trade. Critics argue these are utopian ideals. They point to the failures of large institutions. The debate is complex, with valid arguments on both sides. The idea of a world government sends shivers down the spines of many. Opponents see it as a step towards tyranny, eroding cultural identity and individual liberty. They argue it stifles innovation and imposes a globalist agenda. One of the most common arguments against a world government centers on national sovereignty. Opponents see it as surrendering the power to govern themselves, to make their own laws, to control their own destinies. It's like handing over the keys to your country. Each nation has its own unique history, culture, and values, and these differences are worth protecting. Critics of a world government often link it to the broader phenomenon of globalization, which they view with suspicion and distrust. They see globalization as a force that erodes national borders, weakens local economies, and homogenizes cultures, ultimately leading to a bland, corporate-controlled world. They worry about a future where everyone eats the same fast food, watches the same Hollywood movies, and listens to the same pop music, where unique traditions and customs are replaced by generic globalized culture. They argue that globalization, in its current form, primarily benefits multinational corporations and the wealthy elite, while leaving behind ordinary citizens who are often left to deal with the downsides, job losses, environmental degradation, and a weakening of social safety nets. For them, a world government would be the ultimate expression of globalization, a final nail in the coffin of national sovereignty and cultural diversity. They see it as a recipe for a dystopian future where individual identity is subsumed by a globalized monoculture. The fear of a world government is the potential for tyranny. History shows that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Critics argue a global entity would be ripe for abuse and oppression. They imagine a world where dissent is silenced and rights are trampled. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide from a global police state. Holding a global government accountable is inherently difficult. Such a government would be too distant and easily influenced by special interests. The risk of a tyrannical world government is too great to bear. A divided world is preferable to a potentially oppressive global regime. The best defense against tyranny is maintaining diverse power centers. Let's face it, humans have a knack for conflict. We've been fighting wars since we lived in caves and fought over the last woolly mammoth steak. Proponents of a world government say it's time to break this cycle of violence. They argue that a unified world would eliminate the root causes of war, creating the conditions for lasting peace. Think about it. If there are no more countries, there are no more national borders to fight over. No more territorial disputes, no more nationalistic rivalries, no more us versus them mentality. Just one bigger sharing the same planet. Of course, it's not quite that simple. Human nature is complex and conflict can arise even within families, let alone a global community. But advocates argue that a world government could establish mechanisms for peaceful conflict resolution, mediating disputes before they escalate into violence. Imagine a world court with the authority to settle international disputes, a global police force to keep the peace, and a world government committed to diplomacy and cooperation. It's a utopian vision for sure, but one that has captured the imaginations of peace advocates for generations. Right now, the world's resources are distributed about as fairly as a game of Monopoly where one player starts with all the hotels. Proponents of a world government argue that a unified system could ensure a more equitable distribution of resources, tackling global poverty and reducing inequality. Think about it. The planet has enough resources to provide for everyone, but they're not always in the right place or accessible to those who need them most. A world government, advocates say, could manage these resources for the benefit of all humankind. Imagine a world where clean water, food, and essential resources are considered basic human rights, guaranteed to everyone regardless of where they happen to live. Critics might argue that this sounds like global socialism, a recipe for economic stagnation. Climate change, pandemics, cyber-terrorism. These are the kinds of threats that keep world leaders up at night. They're complex, interconnected, and they don't respect national borders. Proponents of a world government argue that these global challenges require global solutions and a unified world is best equipped to tackle them head-on. Think about it. Climate change doesn't care about your political affiliation or where you live. A hurricane, a drought, a rising sea level, these are indiscriminate disasters, and they require a coordinated global response. In an interconnected world, a virus can travel the globe in a matter of hours. Right now, international law is a bit like a school playground without any teachers. There are rules, but enforcing them is tricky, and some kids, countries, try to get away with breaking them. Advocates for a world government argue that a unified legal system, with a global court and enforcement mechanisms, is essential for a just and orderly world. Think about it. Right now, if a country commits human rights abuses or violates international treaties, there's no guarantee of consequences. A world government, proponents argue, could establish a system of global accountability. Imagine a world court with the authority to investigate and prosecute crimes against humanity, regardless of where they occur. One of the biggest fears about a world government is that it would erase our differences, blending all the world's cultures into one big, boring smoothie. Opponents worry about a world without national identities, where everyone eats the same food, wears the same clothes, and thinks the same thoughts. Critics argue that cultural diversity is what makes the world interesting, that our differences are something to be celebrated, not eradicated. They worry that a world government, even with the best intentions, would inevitably prioritize unity over diversity, leading to a bland, homogenized world. They argue that national identity provides a sense of belonging, a shared history and culture that connects people to a specific place and time. To erase those distinctions, they say, would be to rob people of a fundamental part of their identity. Another major concern about a world government is the sheer scale of it. How do you govern billions of people spread across continents speaking different languages with different needs and priorities? Opponents worry about a bureaucratic behemoth so large and complex that it becomes unresponsive, inefficient, and ultimately unaccountable. Imagine waiting in line for years just to get a permit approved, or trying to navigate a phone tree with a million options, none of which address your specific problem. Critics argue that a government that large would be a breeding ground for corruption and inefficiency. They worry that power would become concentrated in the hands of a select few, far removed from the people they're supposed to serve. They point to the often frustrating experiences people have with their own national governments as a microcosm of what could go wrong on a global scale. Even if we assume the best intentions, even if we believe that those in power genuinely want to create a better world, there's still the risk that a world government could become too controlling, too obsessed with order and stability, even if it means sacrificing individual liberty. Imagine a world where dissent is suppressed, where freedom of speech is limited, where citizens are constantly monitored in the name of security. Critics worry that a world government, no matter how well-intentioned, would be tempted to consolidate power, to eliminate any potential threats to its authority. They argue that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that even the most benevolent leaders can become tyrants if given enough power. They point to historical examples of governments that started with noble goals but ended up as oppressive regimes. They argue that human nature is inherently flawed and that no single system of government, no matter how well designed, can completely safeguard against the potential for abuse of power. The world is a messy, complicated tapestry of different cultures, each with its own unique history, traditions, beliefs and values. Critics of a world government worry that forcing everyone under one set of rules, one system of governance, could lead to conflict and resentment as different cultural groups clash over whose values will prevail. Imagine trying to create a single legal system that accommodates Sharia law, secular humanism and indigenous belief systems. Critics argue that cultural differences run deep and that attempts to force a single, homogeneous culture on a global scale would be met with resistance, backlash and potentially even violence. They worry that a world government could become a battleground for cultural wars, as different groups vie for dominance. They believe that a world of diverse cultures, coexisting peacefully, is a richer and more vibrant world than one where everyone is forced to conform to a single global standard. Okay, enough theory. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Is there a secret cabal of global elites plotting to usher in a new world order? Well, probably not in the way conspiracy theorists imagine, but there are real-world movements and organizations with varying degrees of influence that are pushing for greater global cooperation and, in some cases, outright advocating for a world government. On one side, you have groups like the World Federalist Movement, which has been around since the aftermath of World War II, advocating for a democratic world federation. Then you have more influential organizations like the World Economic Forum, often attended by world leaders and business magnates. The United Nations, with its iconic headquarters in New York City, often becomes a lightning rod in discussions about a world government. Created in the aftermath of World War II with the noble goal of preventing future wars, the UN has become the most prominent symbol of international cooperation, for better or for worse. Proponents of a world government often point to the UN as a potential foundation for a future global governing body. They argue that the UN, despite its flaws, has made significant progress in areas like peacekeeping, humanitarian aid, and international law, demonstrating the potential for global cooperation. They believe that the UN structure, with its General Assembly representing all member states and its Security Council tasked with maintaining international peace and security, could be reformed and strengthened to create a more effective global governing body. However, critics argue that the UN is too bureaucratic, too easily influenced by powerful states, and too often hampered by its own charter, which emphasizes national sovereignty and limits its ability to act decisively. Let's be honest, the New World Order is like catnip for conspiracy theorists. It's a topic that sparks endless speculation, outlandish claims, and enough YouTube rabbit holes to keep you clicking for days, from shadowy groups like the Illuminati and the Freemasons to alien lizards disguised as world leaders. The New World Order has become a catch-all phrase for those who believe a powerful hidden force is orchestrating world events. Some conspiracy theories claim that a New World Order refers to a plan by a secretive elite to establish a totalitarian world government, eliminating national borders, abolishing individual liberties and controlling the global population through surveillance, propaganda, and even mind control. These theories often point to seemingly unrelated events, economic crises, natural disasters, even celebrity deaths, as evidence of a grand conspiracy orchestrated by this shadowy elite. While most of these claims lack credible evidence and often rely on fear-mongering and misinformation, the persistence of New World Order conspiracy theories highlights a deep-seated anxiety about the future, a sense that powerful forces are at work beyond the control of ordinary people. So, where do we go from here? Is a unified world government a utopian fantasy, a dystopian nightmare, or something in between? The reality is, the future of global governance is likely to be more nuanced and complex than any single ideology can capture. The challenges facing humanity in the 21st century, climate change, pandemics, global inequality, technological disruption, are increasingly interconnected and require global solutions. No single nation, no matter how powerful, can solve these problems alone. This growing interdependence is driving a need for greater international cooperation, for institutions and mechanisms that can address global challenges in a coordinated and effective manner. Whether this will eventually lead to a formal world government or some other form of global governance remains to be seen. One thing is certain, the debate over the New World Order in all its complexity and contradictions reflects a fundamental question about the future of humanity. Can we overcome our differences and work together to create a more just, equitable and sustainable world for all? We've travelled through the looking glass of the New World Order, exploring the hopes and fears, the arguments for and against a world united under a single government. So, where do we land? Is such a thing even possible? The easy answer is, nobody knows. Predicting the future is a fool's errand. But here's the thing, just because an idea seems impossible today doesn't mean it'll always be that way. 100 years ago, people would have laughed if you told them we'd have smartphones, self-driving cars, and the internet. The world is a complex and ever-changing place. Nobody knows what the future holds. Maybe a world government is just a pipe dream, a utopian fantasy that ignores the messy realities of human nature. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the next logical step in our evolution as a species, a necessary response to the global challenges we face. Even if a full-blown world government isn't in the cards, the forces driving us towards greater global interdependence aren't going away. Climate change will continue to heat up the planet, pandemics will disregard borders, and technological advancements will further connect us in ways we can't even imagine yet. The question isn't whether we'll see a world government in our lifetime, but rather, how will we navigate this increasingly interconnected world?